This video is brought to you by the letter S. When to ID with your call sign. GMRS, which is under Part 95E, and amateur radio, which is Part 97 of the FCC rules, requires that you use call signs. What we're going to learn today is what are the requirements, why do so many people get it wrong, especially for GMRS, and what do the FCC rules actually say about when to ID. So what is the purpose of using a call sign? Well, the main one is to correct interference. So if one station is interfering with another, they're IDing and they can work to correct the interference. The other one is what the rules say, which we'll get to in a minute. So this is it. This is the rules condensed. This is the only slide you need to know about when to use your ID. So for both general mobile radio service and amateur radio, you use your call sign at the end of all your transmissions. Not each, but when your conversation is over. In other words, when you're signing out. You also need to use it after talking and moving to a new channel. So if you say something on a channel and you're going to move somewhere else, use your call sign. You need to periodically give your call sign while having a conversation. For GMRS, you need to do that at least every 15 minutes. For amateur radio, it's every 10 minutes. People seem to be really confused about using their call signs in the GMRS because the rules are hard to understand. They're written strangely, and there's a lot of misinformation on the YouTube and forums and places like that. The first big misconception is you have to ID on your first transmission. So the first time you key up. That is false. I think one of the reasons for that is, besides the rules, is that is one of the ways that amateur radio operators make a contact through a repeater, is by using their call sign. It's not required that you call sign on your first transmission. The second one is that you have to ID each time you transmit. So each time you press the button on that microphone to communicate, that you have to ID. That is also false, because then why would there be a limit to ID within every 15 minutes? Alright, let's get into what the rules actually say. Let's start off with Part 97, Section 119, Station Identification. This is for amateur radio. This section is a little easier to understand than the GMRS. So Part A says each amateur station, except a space station or telecommand station, must transmit its assigned call sign on its transmitting channel at the end of each communication, and at least every 10 minutes during a communication. You'll notice they use the word communication. That's a conversation, multiple transmissions. For the purpose of clearly making the source of the transmission from the station known to those receiving the transmissions, no station may transmit unidentified communications or signals, or transmit as the station call sign any call sign not authorized to the station. Okay, that really doesn't pertain to what we're talking about, and the rest of this section doesn't either. So let's get into the GMRS rules. We need to focus on the S at the end of the words and how transmission and communication are used. The GMRS rules say each GMRS station must be identified by transmission of its FCC assigned call sign at the end of transmissions, not each transmission. And that means when you're done transmitting completely, and at periodic intervals during transmissions, except as provided in paragraph C of this section. A unit number may be included after the call sign in the identification. So when we read a federal regulation or law, and it says, referring to paragraph C, well, the best thing to do is to just jump down to that paragraph and see what they're talking about. So it says any GMRS repeater station is not required to transmit station identification if it retains only communications from GMRS stations operating under authority of the individual license under which it operates, meaning you have to get the repeater owner's permission, and the GMRS station, meaning you, whose communications are transmitted are properly identified in accordance with this section. While we're down here, let's just read what B says. The call sign must be transmitted using voice in the English language or International Morse code telegraphy using an audible tone. Some people take that and say that all communications have to be in English. That's not the case, just the call sign. So let's move back up to the top of the page and finish reading. Now the first section that we read pretty much says the same thing that A1 and A2 say. So the GMRS station call sign must be transmitted following a single transmission, meaning you only transmit once and that's it, or a series of transmissions, meaning you're having a communication, and after 15 minutes and at least once every 15 minutes thereafter during a series of transmissions lasting more than 15 minutes. Okay, so this part 1 is where people start to think that you have to do it on your first transmission. That's not what single means. It means you're only transmitting once, usually to establish contact. No one answers, you've given your call sign already, you can move on. The other word to focus on in A1 is that first word, following, meaning you do it after. So after a series of transmissions, you're finished, you call sign, you sign out. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you learned something. See you next time.